That's 5. One of my favorite things about jazz drums is something I'm not sure there's a word for. It's what Elvin played on a Love Supreme or Zoltan. It's what Max Roach played on Star Eyes. What Art Blakey played on A Night in Tunisia with the Jazz Messengers. Some of it comes from the afro-latin tradition. It's inspired by that, but it's not exactly that. But whatever it is, it's awesome, and it's part of jazz drumming. And it's also really challenging to learn, and it'll help your touch and coordination along the way. Today, we'll explore a little, and I mean a really little, of where these beats come from. And more importantly, I'll show you a 5-step method to start learning them. In any time signature, today on 80/20, fake Latin jazz beats. Stay tuned. And dudes, if you're thinking, ooh, I bet there's a lot of juicy material in this lesson and I would like it transcribed, you don't have to do that yourself. We've done it for you. You can get it for free by clicking the link below the player. On to the next one. Before we get into what fake Latin jazz is, we should probably talk a little bit about what real Latin jazz beats are. There's a deep family tree of tradition here that goes back to West Africa. Migrates through Brazil, Cuba, Puerto Rico, etc. that we're not gonna touch on. But let's define real Latin jazz beats as something that either comes from somebody steeped in the tradition or somebody playing a part for an actual mambo, tumba, merengue, etc. So, Changuito, Jose Luis Quintana, drummer for Los Van Van, also known as the Rolling Stones of Cuba. Created a beat known as the songo, which is widely known as the go-to drum kit pattern when you're playing mambo-esque things with a real percussion section. The pattern hits the clave but doesn't interfere with anything the conga or bongo player is doing. Okay, modern examples of, I would say, authentic Afro-Latin drummers. Daphnis Prieto. Grew up in Cuba, played with Eddie Palmieri among others. If Daphnis plays it, it's correct. Drummers like Antonio Sanchez, Ernesto Simpson, Adam Cruz, Henry Cole. In the bands they're working with are often stretching the definitions of clave. Often they don't have percussionists, but they're steeped enough in the tradition that, just like if Jack DeJohnette plays it, it doesn't need to be Spangalang, it's still jazz. If these guys play it, it's still what I would call authentic Latin jazz. I'm not even saying drummers like Blakey, Elvin Jones, Max Roach, Tootie Heath, etc. aren't playing authentic Latin beats. When Dizzy Gillespie recorded Manteca in 1947, he worked with Cuban percussionist Luciano Chano Pozo to both write and record the tune, and incorporated Chano's playing and input into the song, so it's kind of an organic fusion. Basically, I'm trying to talk about the tradition enough so I don't have to talk about it. But let's check some of these examples of fake Latin jazz beats. A Love Supreme might be the most famous. A Night in Tunisia by the Jazz Messengers is another one. Con Alma with Stan Getz is yet another. And how about things like the introduction to Star Eyes with Max Roach? And the introduction to Stablemates. The jazz Latin thing has become so deeply wired into jazz's DNA that I'd argue it's a completely separate lineage from the authentic vein. Modern examples are too numerous to list, but I'll give you just 3. Bill Stewart here. And Eric Harland here. Oh, and let's get a Tane one. All of which segues, now that you kind of know what it is, to how to play it. Because there are books out there, but none of them really capture the jazz Latin thing as distinct from the authentic Latin thing. Plus, it's a coordination nightmare if you don't have certain basic skills together. Not to worry, I'll show you a quick step-by-step process to get you started. So guys, I want to start you out with 3 sounds we're going to use, and then we're going to talk about some organizing principles. The sounds at our disposal are cross stick, cymbal bell, and toms. And honorable mention, hi-hat with the left foot and kick drum. Basically everything we're going to create uses those source materials. Now, I'm not saying you need to have these, but another great organizing principle for what to play is going to be 2 things from the Afro-Latin tradition. Number 1 is clave. And if you don't know what that is, I'll show you what it is for a bunch of different time signatures. But a good generic example would be something like 3, 4, 1. The next principle is something called cascara, which I believe comes from the rhythm that a timbale player would play on the side of the shell. I think cascara literally means shell, but it's something to play with the other hand that fits together with the clave. You wouldn't necessarily play 3, 4, 1. But it fits. More realistically, you might play something like, but it's still in clave, it fits together. Finally, there's a melody called the tumbao, which I believe, and you can correct me, comes from the conga drums, which is something like 3, 4, 1. And that's kind of the inspiration for a lot of these things we're going to mess with. So now let's get into step-by-step how you would actually assemble a fake Latin jazz groove. We're going to start in 4, then we're going to do 5, 6, and 7 as well. So, step 1, and this will be transcribed for you, is play the clave with the left hand, or your rim shot hand, whatever that is, and play the cascara on the hats with your right hand or your lead hand. So, 3, 4, 1. Step 2 is we're going to move the hats to all quarters or all eighths. I guess we're going all quarters, 3, 4, 1. And we're going to keep that same thing, but we're just going to move the right hand or the lead hand to the floor tom rim and try to work that coordination out. So 3, 4, 1. Now, the reason we do this is because these are all dry sounds and you can hear how they lock up. Let's play it slower. 3, 4, 1. I may have inadvertently just switched the clave there. So you can do both versions. You can do 3, 4, 1. Or you can do 3, 4, 1. Both equally valid. There's a tradition and a reason behind why these 2 claves exist. Not going to go into it. What we might call step 2.5 is incorporating the kick drum. So we've got 3, 4, 1. And one common thing people do with the kick drum is something like this. 3, 4, 1. Equally valid is something like this. 3, 4. And among those 2, we're going to settle for number 2 because it's going to make it easier when we go to step 3. Step 3 is add your tom melody in. And remember, we're inspired by this melody called the tumbao, which is 3, 4, 1. So let's think about ways we can incorporate toms into our current incarnation of this pattern, which is 3, 4. So let's try adding in some toms. We're going to do it a little slower. 3, 4. Now, the astute among you may be thinking, wait a minute, you completely departed from the clave with the left hand. That's true. And you can do that because it's implied with the cascara. Also, if I'd been showing you the timbal from the beginning, it would have been a little bit too much coordination. So I think it's worth playing the clave at first, just so you can kind of feel how that interrelates. And then when you're notching it up, you add the timbal. Okay, step the final is add the ride cymbal bell, and this is yet another level of complexity. And here's why. You're not just going to uniformly play the ride cymbal bell, everything here, like. Nope, some things are going to be accented and other things aren't. Check it out. So it's worth dwelling a little bit on this ride cymbal bell pattern itself. There's some science, some art to this, but I believe a lot of it comes from the so-called bongo bell that in a mambo band, the bongo player will pick up during the sort of shout chorus. And one thing that's really common for them to play is 3/4. But another common variation is this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why this whole thing is such a multi-tentacled, multivariate coordination nightmare. People really need to respect these faux Latin jazz beats. So let me demonstrate this for you one more time. Now, none of this is to say you can't improvise something completely different from that. Like, that's all valid once you have these basic tools. I'm just kind of showing you the most basic incarnation. By the way, the thing I just played, I think is in a bunch of drum books called the Mozambique. But the thing with those drum books is they'll show you how to play it. They'll show you the traditions it came from, but they won't really show you the matrix, how to take it and construct it from source materials and make other ones. When we come back, we're going to teach you how to do just that with different meters. Whew. Is that enough for you? Well, there's more where that came from. But before we get there, remember, if you want all of this transcribed for you, basically an impromptu free fake Latin jazz book that we just put together for you, you can get that by clicking the link below the player. Just enter your email address in on the next page and tell us where to send it. Okay, for our last chapter, let's talk about transposing these to some odd meters. We're back. Okay, remember I told you I was going to show you different claves for different time signatures? Here's where it gets really interesting. In 4, you've got this clave. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can start that on either the first bar or the second bar of it. If you start it on the second bar, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. For 5, I'm going to give you this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, what are some things we can make with this? Well, let's create it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step 3, we put this on quarters. We move this over to the tom rim. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's add the kick drum in, and we'll just do something like. Notice that the Kaskara we've settled on is actually a 5/8 or 5/16. So it's 4/5. And remember, as you're rearranging this beat, the clave may go away and your patterns may change, but it's just kind of the through line through it. It's hard to explain, but you'll get there. Anyway, our beat is 4/5. Okay, let's layer in our tune bow. Let's figure out where to put our toms. I'm just gonna improv this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, finally, we layer in the ride cymbal bell. And remember, we're playing this. So I think a great way to do that on the bell would be this. It feels like something you'd play on a bongo bell. It lays well. Let's try it. That's 5. So in 6, the clave is actually going to be the same, except it's going to be divided 6 ways instead of 4. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what's your Kaskara going to sound like? Probably something like. By the way, beyond the scope of this lesson, the fact that that can be both in 6 and 4. Etc. Anyway, we arrived at our next step. We're going to put the hi-hat on the quarters again. 4, 5, 6. Let's add our kick drum, see what happens to the melody. 4, 5, 6. And for this one, let's make it a 2-bar pattern, because as long as it's in clave, there's nothing saying it has to be a 1-bar pattern. So let's make a variation. We'll do something like 4, 5, 6. Okay, which gives us interesting options for our tune bow when we add our toms. Let's do something like 4, 5, 6. Again, it's all playing around with those source materials I gave you. Let's add the ride cymbal bell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my God, are you guys ready for 7? In 7, the clave goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you can play a clave and a Kaskara pattern like this. 5, 6, 7. Go on to step 2, move this to the hats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Add the kick drum in, see what happens. 5, 6, 7. Add our tune bow. 5, 6, 7. Last step, add the ride cymbal bell. You'll notice the melody changed. I did that to accommodate the ride cymbal bell. So now it's 5, 6, 7. Stuff happens. Things change. You guys, I've thrown a lot at you. I know it's an imperfect system, but sometimes the map is not the territory. And I'm trying to capture the fact that there's nuance, there's art, there's science. There's not a perfect system. It's not top down, but this system will get you closer. Anyway, if it's a fake jazz Latin gig, that is how you will get the gig. So dudes, back again for your outro. Hope you enjoyed that. This is a big topic to throw your arms around. Hopefully I threaded the needle. I think I'm qualified to talk about the jazz aspect of this as a jazz drummer who kind of paid my dues. I don't make any claims to have any special perspective on the authentic side of it, but see what you guys think. Was this useful as a category or lesson? Let me know in the comments below constructively. And dudes, it's been real. I always enjoy these. See you again real soon in another lesson of the week. La 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 la, window speaking. And if I don't have enough time to finish, then